Good evening, everyone. So here we are in SME591 Research Project Seminar. And I am Andrew Tan, and I will be talking about the subtopic of problem statement today. I assume that all of you will have downloaded my notes. I have placed it in e-learning. So once you have downloaded my notes, you will be able to follow my lecture on problem statement following this. Next. Why are we here? Why are you in this class? This SME591 Research Project Seminar. The reason is because you are supposed to come up with a research proposal. You are supposed to write a research proposal for your class SME591. And then what are the components of a research proposal, you might ask? These here, I've listed 7 components here, which are actually essential in any research proposal. It must have, number 1, an introduction. Number 2, it must have a problem statement. Number 3, hypothesis. Hypothesis is actually not compulsory. That's why I put an asterisk up here. As you can see, I put an asterisk up here. So the component for hypothesis is not compulsory if your study is descriptive in nature. Then you don't need a section on hypothesis. Next is a section on objectives. A complete research proposal must have a section on objectives, followed by literature review, methodology, and then data and research scope. All these components are compulsory in a research proposal, okay, except for the part on hypothesis, okay? As I mentioned, it is not compulsory if you're doing a research or you're doing a paper which is descriptive in nature. So the reason I ask students to pay careful attention in this class, SME591 Research Project Seminar, is because if you do your research proposal seriously, then you would have completed your research project in terms of chapter 1 in this case, because introduction, problem statement, objectives fall in chapter 1 of your research project. Chapter 2 includes the literature review. Chapter 2 is the literature review, while chapter 3 is methodology and data and research scope. So while you are asked to prepare a research proposal for this class, SME591, you are essentially preparing 3 chapters of your research project, SME599, because if you do this seriously, you are actually completing chapter 1 already. You have introduction for your research proposal, which you can use for your research project. If you identify your problem statement properly in your research proposal, you can use it in your research project 599. If you identify your objectives seriously in SME591 research proposal, research project seminar, then you can use it also for your SME599 research project. Similar to lit review, which will actually be in chapter 2 of your research project later on. And then if you look into chapter 3, methodology, data and research scope, chapter 3 in your research project will actually be this part here, methodology and data and research scope in your research proposal. That's why I ask students to pay careful attention in preparing their research proposal. Because once you have completed all this, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 in your research proposal, what else is there except for chapter 4, your results? Of course, you will not have any results yet at this moment because you are doing a research proposal only, right? But after that, you would conduct your analysis, you will get your results, and you will just write up your chapter 4. And then based on your results in chapter 4, you will come up with conclusions and policy implications for chapter 5. So as I mentioned earlier, if students pay careful attention to their SME591 research project seminar, you would have done the majority of what you are supposed to do. So here, we are going to be talking about all these topics: introduction, problem statement, objectives, literature review, methodology, data and research scope in the research proposal. That's why you have to focus on this very hard. Pay careful attention to the research proposal, because once it is approved, you would have finished 3 chapters of your study. Okay, so the reason we are here today is that my role is to talk about problem statement. That's all. My role is to talk about a problem statement only. Other lecturers will talk about objectives, literature review, how to conduct a literature review, methodology, how to report your data and research, how to report the results and the conclusions. But my role in this 1-hour lecture is simple, and that is to talk about problem statement. And I can't emphasize it enough, the importance of problem statement and how short it must be, how brief it must be, how direct to the point the problem statement must be. Let's look at this in greater detail. But before we begin, I need to go into introduction. Okay, why? Because as you can see here, in a research proposal or in any research study, before we go into problem statement, I must talk about introduction first. Right? Before the problem statement is introduction. Therefore, I do need to go to a little bit about introduction before going into the problem statement. So let me talk about the do's and the don'ts for the introduction. Then I will talk about the do's and the don't for problem statement. And then I will give you some examples of problem statements from previous students. And then we will look at them together and analyze and critique. Why is it a good problem statement, or why is it a bad problem statement? All right. So now let us begin with looking at the introduction. The do's for introduction. Number 1, whenever you are writing the introduction for your research project, do introduce the topic of research. Do introduce the topic of research. What do I mean by do introduce the topic of research? You have to introduce what are you doing in your study in the introduction, right? So you have to introduce the topic that you are doing, and based on my students, my past students, previous students who have looked into microeconomics and consumer demand, these are some of the topics that they have looked at. Demand for fast food, demand for vitamins and minerals, demand for domestic travel, demand for FAFH, food away from home. My students have looked also at demand for private tuition for little children, demand for physical activity, demand for insurance, cigarettes demand, and blood donation. Who are the people who are more likely to donate their blood? Demand for fruits and vegetables consumption, demand for gambling, online shopping. Who are the individuals, who are the consumers who will conduct online shopping? Demand for recreation, demand for DVD and VCD, although nowadays there's no longer any DVD or VCD anymore, right? Demand for monorail services, organic food, sugar sweeteners, and demand for adequate sleeping hours. My students have done all these topics before. Sleeping hours means that they measure the demand of hours of sleeping by individuals. If it is greater than 8 hours a night, that means it's considered as adequate sleeping hours. Or if it is less than 8 hours per night, it is considered as inadequate sleeping hours. So you need to introduce the topic. You need to introduce what you are doing in the introduction of your research. So here you are supposed to provide definitions. Right? What does it mean by sleeping hours? As I mentioned earlier, more than 8 hours is adequate. Less than 8 hours is considered as inadequate sleeping hours. So you have to define what is adequate and what is inadequate. You have to define if you're looking at FAFH, food away from home. What does food away from home mean? Eating out, right? If eating out is food away from home, what about those people who go to restaurants to eat? Is it food away from home? Fast food. What is fast food? Is fast food considered McDonald's, Kentucky? Or how about the person who bought from the hawker stall or the burger stall down the road? Is that considered fast food or not? You have to define. Demand for blood donation. Is the person donating regularly considered as those who donate 3 to 4 times a year? How about non-donors? How about casual donors? Those people who go and donate once every 3 years or once every 2 years. These are casual donors. When they like it, they go and donate. When they don't like it, they don't go donate. But the usual donors, regular donors, they will go every 3 months or every 4 months in a year. So you have to define what do you mean by what are blood donors, what are non-blood donors, who are the non-blood donors, and what is defined as non-donor, casual donor, and regular donors. So you have to define all this in the introduction of your topic. As an example, I can only give you examples of students, the topics of students that I have worked with, right? So these are some of the topics. And then do provide the background of the research topic. Do provide the background of what you are doing. After you introduce the topic of your research, you provide some background. What do I mean by that? It could be historical or chronological background of your research topic. For example, My students have done demand for fast food, as I mentioned earlier. So in the introduction, do introduce the background of fast food in Malaysia. For example, you might go into the history of fast food starting from 1921. First fast food restaurant was White Castle in the US. And then first ever fast food restaurant that came into Malaysia was in 1963, A&W. It's still around today, A&W, right? It was opened in Jalan Tunku Abdul Rahman in 1963. After that, 1982, McDonald's opened its first outlet in Jalan Bukit Bintang in KL. That was the first one. All right. After that, you might want to talk about, before that, 1973, KFC first outlet located in Jalan Tunku Abdul Rahman was opened, 1973. And then 1982, McDonald's opened their first outlet in Jalan Bukit Bintang. And then 1990, other fast food restaurants started franchising in Malaysia when fast food started to become popular. So you can chronologically trace the growth of fast food in Malaysia, for example, by looking at the historical background or the chronological background of your research topic. So you might want to throw in a few photographs in your introduction. Do that because you're introducing the topic of your research and you're introducing the background of the research topic. Do include citations, quotations, statistics. Just now I mentioned that you are allowed to provide statistics on the growth of fast food in Malaysia if you're doing fast food. So how about growth of KFC? How many restaurants were there in 1973 and then 1980, in the 1990s? How has the fast food or the franchise industry grown throughout the years in Malaysia? You provide citation, you cite from newspaper articles, you quote, you provide statistics from reports, government reports, in whatever topic that you want to do, whether it is fast food or whether it's sleeping hours. You might want to share what are the statistics of people who have adequate sleep in your country or in Malaysia, and what are the statistics of those who do not have enough sleep, less than 8 hours. Previous studies would have done this. Government reports would have all this, they will have statistics, citations, quotations in the introduction. Why do I say this? Because afterwards, when we talk about the problem statement, you are not supposed to provide this in the problem statement. You are not supposed to provide citations. You are not supposed to provide quotations. Do not quote. You are not supposed to provide statistics in your problem statement. Citations, quotations, and statistics belong in the introduction when you are introducing the topic. Do not put all this in your problem statement. That's why it is a do here. Do include citations, quotations, statistics in the introduction. Afterwards, we will see. I'll give you some examples. You will see cases, examples of students who include citations, quotations, statistics in their problem statement, and that is wrong. So here, you are supposed to look at what other studies, what other researchers have done before by looking at the citations, the quotations, and the statistics. What others have done, what is the growth trend of whatever you are doing in your country or for your topic in the introduction. Now, let's go into problem statement. I've already talked about what to put in your introduction. Now let's go into what we are supposed to be talking about today, the problem statement. Do make sure you have a problem at hand, issues to be examined, or comparisons to be made. Make sure you describe the problem at hand in your problem statement. Do describe what are the issues to be examined in your problem statement. Do describe the comparisons that has to be made, that has not been made in your problem statement. Do this. Do consider posing all this in the form of questions. For example, questions arising include whether the residents of Penang are willing to pay for river cleanup. Okay, pose your problem statement in the form of questions like this, such as mentioned here. Right? Questions arising include whether the residents of Penang are willing to pay for river cleanup. So if this question is not addressed, what are the problems that will arise? We do not know who are the residents who are willing to pay for river cleanup. Why is it an important issue to be examined? Okay, so do consider posing the problem statement in the form of questions. Do answer the question, what are the contributions of this paper, of this thesis, or of this topic, having solved these questions or addressed the problems that are arising. For example, having documented these concerns, the state government of Penang may then take the appropriate actions to address the issue of river pollution in Penang. All right, so here you have addressed or answered the question. These are the contributions of the paper, of the thesis. Once you document the concerns, then the state government may take appropriate actions to address the issue of river pollution in Penang. Do provide justification in your problem statement. Do provide justification such as answers to these questions are relevant because they could guide researchers with respect to the choice of an appropriate estimator for computing welfare measures. This is a justification of doing the study which you can include in your problem statement. Do include such justifications in your problem statement. Then, do provide in point form. You can provide your justification in point form also. We will see afterwards several examples of justifications in point form in the problem statement. Most importantly, do answer the question, what is your economic problem in the problem statement? Remember, you have a problem statement, right? In your thesis, you must be able to answer this question here, which is, what is your economic problem? What is your economic problem? What is the problem that you want to solve? If somebody were to read your problem statement, they must be able to identify what is the economic problem that you are trying to solve. If they want to know what are you examining, what are you trying to solve, they must read it not from the introduction, not from the methodology, not from the objectives. They must be able to identify the problem that you are trying to solve from your problem statement by looking at how you answer this question here. What is your economic problem? If you do not do this study, what are the problems that may arise? Okay, whenever I read a problem statement, I ask this question here. Did the student state it very clearly or not? If he or she do not do the study, do not conduct the study, what are the problems that may arise? If you have stated all these problems very clearly, then you have a very good problem statement. I hope you understand that. How to identify a good problem statement is to see whether the problem statement has identified what are the problems that may arise if the study is not conducted. I like to show this picture to my students whenever I talk about problem statement. What is this picture all about? It's this guy here and this lady. Can you imagine if you are sleeping in the middle of the night and then you wake up, your spouse, your husband or your wife also wake up and ask you, honey, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? I look at you very sleepless. Okay? And you are trying to describe to your spouse, you are thinking about your study, the problem statement, the study that you are going to be conducting in your research project. Where will you describe, how will you describe the problem, or how will you describe what you are trying to solve? The answer would be in the problem statement. The answer should be from the problem statement. You describe the problem that you are trying to solve based on the problem statement. You are not going to talk about in 1921, the first fast food was White Castle in the US. 1963, the first ever fast food restaurant was A&W, opened in Malaysia. 1973, KFC came in. 1982, McDonald's opened up. 1990, other fast food restaurants started franchising. And then the growth, the statistics, no. Your spouse will fall asleep again. Okay? You want to be clear what is the problem that you want to solve. So you want to describe the problem of not conducting a research that examine fast food demand in Malaysia. Why is it important? Where is the problem coming from if you do not conduct a study on fast food demand for fast food in Malaysia? That is where you get the answer in the problem statement. The answer would be from the problem statement. Don't go into all the historical description, the chronological description, because this is in the introduction. Okay, when you describe the problem, you don't introduce all the historical or chronological issues. You describe why you are conducting the study and what is the importance, the relevance of you conducting the study. And that is from the problem statement. Do not. Next would be do not. Do not do what in the problem statement? Do not make this section, the problem statement, more than one page. Do not make this section, the problem statement, more than one page. Why? Because you are not trying to solve the whole world's problems. You're trying to solve a little problem only You're trying to look at a small study only, demand for food away from home, demand for fast food, demand for blood donation. It's a small problem only. Don't have 15 pages of problem statement. All right? You're not trying to solve the whole world's problems. You're trying to solve this small little problem that you have identified, write your research project, graduate, get out of here. Don't try to solve the whole world's problem. Don't make this more than 1 page. Don't make this more than 2 paragraphs. In fact, 1 paragraph is enough also. I will show you examples of problem statements of my previous students who are more than 1 page. Do not include citations, quotations, statistics in the problem statement because, as I mentioned earlier, citations, quotations, and statistics have a place of its own, which is in the introduction, not in the problem statement, not the section in problem statement. Otherwise, you are creating white noise because people are expecting to read the problem statement, but then you are providing them with citations, quotations, statistics. It is white noise. You are making your problem statement messy. Do not include introduction, do not include objectives, do not include hypothesis, do not include methodology in the problem statement section. Why? Because there is a specific section for introduction. There is a specific section for objectives. There is a specific section for hypothesis, methodology, and so forth in the research proposal, in the chapter 1 when you write up your introduction. Okay, there is a specific section. Problem statement must stand by its own to identify the problem at hand, to identify the problem that you are trying to solve. That's all. Don't talk about methodology, how you are going to solve the problem in your problem statement, because how you're going to do it is in the methodology. What you are going to do is in objectives. Objective, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, right? Do not put the objectives in the section for problem statement because the problem statement must identify the problem only. What you're going to do to solve the problem is objective, separate section. How you're going to solve the objective is methodology, separate section again. I hope I make this very clear already. That's why the problem statement should be short and sweet, because you don't want to dilute it with introduction, objective, methodology, hypothesis in the problem statement. Now, let's look at some examples of previous students' problem statement or statement of problem. You have, all of them have downloaded these notes from me, and then you would have a copy too. You can study them, and then you can identify, are they good or bad problem statements, why they are good, and why they are bad problem statements. Let's look at the first one. You don't have to really understand the exact terminology, but you can tease out. The main example I want you to do is to identify, did the student state this or not? If you do not do this study, what are the problems that may arise? We will ask this question all the time in all the problem statements that we are going to be looking at next. Right? If you do not do this study, what are the problems that may arise? So let's read. From here, since the censored and truncated models are susceptible to misspecification errors, several important issues need to be investigated. Okay, so here The first issue is, what are the effects of using misspecified recreation demand functions to compute consumer surplus? Second, is it necessarily true that misspecified recreation demand functions lead to misleading or inaccurate consumer surplus estimates? These are in question form. Here, these are questions that are being asked. What are the problems that may arise? Third, by how much are these estimates misleading or inaccurate? Fourth, are the estimates still useful for policy analysis? These are the problems that may arise if this study is not conducted. Right? And here, the last sentence, at present, no study has investigated these questions in a rigorous econometric manner is the justification. So this is a good statement of problem because it identifies what are the problems that may arise if this study is not conducted. Let's look at the second one. Agricultural economists have applied censored regression models to a host of empirical issues, blah, 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 right? However, in most cases, these studies did not pay sufficient attention to the quality of the estimated censored model. In particular, many of these studies did not test for violation of the assumption of normality, homoscedasticity, and non-omitted variables. Consequently, estimators from these empirical studies could be suspect. This is a statement of the problem. If you do not do this study, what are the problems that may arise? Many of these studies did not test for violation of assumptions of normality. Consequently, estimators from these empirical studies could be suspect. This is a good problem statement. That is how long? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 lines of problem statement. Short and sweet because the problem statement identifies empirical studies did not pay sufficient attention to the quality of the estimated censored model. So the problem is identified, especially looking at violation or assumptions of normality, homoscedasticity, and non-omitted variables. Consequently, the estimators could be suspect. All right, short and to the sweet, identifying what is the problem at hand. Next, number 3, problem statement. The first thing that you see, the problem statement and objective already. First thing already, you know it is wrong because just now I told you already, problem statement should stand by itself. Objectives will have another section, objective by itself, stand on its own. Because objective is what the study intends to do. Problem statement is identifying the problem if this study is not conducted. So this, once you look at it, you know it's a bad problem statement already because it combines problem statement and objectives. Number 2, if you do not do, let me ask this question in all problem statements, right? If you do not do this study, what are the problems that may arise? But once you look at this problem statement, you look at the statistics that are given. We produce more than 15,000 tons of rubbish every day. It is a matter of time before we run out of rubbish. Then every state spends about 40 to 70% for the purpose of collecting and disposing the rubbish. Is it a problem? Is it describing a problem that this study is going to solve? These are statistics, should be in the introduction. These statistics, these quotations, these citations should be in the introduction and not in a problem statement. Okay. Recycling is the best answer for these problems. Recycling can help in reducing the rubbish we produce, at the same time reducing the environmental pollution from rubbish. These are just statements which have not examined what are the problems that may arise if this study is not conducted. Okay. Thus, the focus of this project is to look into the three main aspects of recycling, naming what, why, and how recycling, blah, 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 blah. This is the objective. The focus of this project is to do this. That is objective. So here, the student has combined objectives with the problem statement and then included statistics unnecessarily in the problem statement. Diluted the problem statement already. The next one, again, SMIs are recognized as important locomotive of growth to Malaysia and particularly to Penang, where 65% of the factories are SMIs. Okay, what is the problem? What are the problems that may arise? First sentence, SMIs are recognized as an important locomotive of growth and particularly Penang, where 65% of the factories are SMI. All this should be in the introduction, right or not? Instead of being in the problem statement, because this is not a problem. Okay. Moreover, import bill on food is almost reaching 10 billion per annum. Okay, this again is statistics that do not belong in the problem statement. Don't put statistics, citations, quotations in the problem statement. Another one, number 5. The Asian financial crisis will not only currency crisis, but also involves severe distress for banking system, i.e. banking crisis. As Malaysia is one of the countries in Asia that experiences banking crisis, this study tries to investigate whether macroeconomic fundamentals volatility is one of the reasons that contributed to the banking crisis in Malaysian economy. This study also tried to identify what are the other factors that can contribute to banking crisis in Malaysian economy. What do you think? Is this a good problem statement or not? Problem statement number 5. First, it's good in the sense that it is short, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines only, right? But here, I feel that it is looking at the objectives. This study also tried to identify what are the factors that can contribute to banking crisis in Malaysia. This sounds like an objective rather than a problem that may arise if this study is not being conducted. Okay? The reader must be able to identify what is the problem that will occur if this study is not conducted. Again, this study tries to investigate. If you are doing a study, you don't try to investigate. All right? You don't try. Don't put statements like this in your thesis. This study investigates. Okay. This study examines. Okay. Don't say you try to do it or not try to do it. So this is not a good problem statement either, although it is short. All right. The correct way to do it is to highlight what are the problems that may occur. What are the information that is lacking in terms of macroeconomic fundamentals volatility that contribute to the banking crisis in the Malaysian economy. Highlight that instead. Another one, in view of the important role of savings in economic development and growth, it is necessary to study the forces that drive savings in the country. In addition, it is also necessary to identify which policy instruments have been crucial in promoting high savings ratio in the past that could be used in the future. Not bad. Having documented these concerns, the government may then take the appropriate action to further increase the rate of domestic savings in the country. This is the justifications part. This is a good problem statement. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines only. But here, if you do not do the study, what are the problems that may arise? Okay. The problems that may arise include identifying what are the policy instruments that are crucial in promoting high savings that could be used in the future. Then the government can take appropriate actions to increase the rate of domestic savings in the country. It can be further fine-tuned. This problem can be further fine-tuned to answer what are the problems that may arise. But I would think that this is a possible problem statement. Next, this one is by my former student doing fast food. Given the rapid pace of growth in the Malaysian fast food industry, there exists a demand for information on the composition and level of current and future consumption in the fast food industry. So what is lacking? What is lacking? What are the problems that may arise is that there is a lack of information on the composition and level of current and future consumption in the fast food. Unfortunately, the extant literature on FAFH, particularly in the local fast food industry, is lacking, right? So far, it's good. But what happens with this is that there is a footnote. Footnote here, footnote number 3, literature review, several researchers, blah, 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 blah. In the problem statement, I told you just now already, literature review must not be in problem statement. Literature review has a separate section by itself, separate chapter by itself, or definition. The author focuses only on fast food restaurant in his research. Other type of FAFH, such as eating in restaurants or conventional hawker stalls, are excluded. All this is definition. Introduction. It should be introduction. Okay, this is still okay. Answer to these questions are relevant because the fast food industry and food service industry are always interested in studying food consumption patterns and identifying their target groups on which to focus their marketing strategy. This is good here, but all this is unnecessary in the problem statement. Number 8, most of past researchers did not pay sufficient attention on the consumer bank selection decision. All right, so what is the problem that may arise? The problem that may arise is previous studies did not pay sufficient attention on the consumer bank selection decision. Okay, maybe it's a good topic here because the researcher has identified that previous researchers did not pay sufficient attention on consumer bank selection decisions. Okay, so here, this research will then focus in consumer preference for foreign bank entries, specifically in Penang. This is somewhat like objective already, this part, the second part of the sentence here, not so good. I would take it out. Okay, then financial liberalization is where significant market development is likely to take place. Therefore, Malaysia has approached liberalization in a gradual manner. It is biggest challenge for local banks to sustain in competitive environment. It is possible local banks can improve their services and be more competitive in financial institutions, or local banks become less competitive and obsolete in banking environment. It is not, it is. It should be, is it possible that local banks can improve their services and be more competitive? Right? So this one is acceptable, but needs to be improved in terms of language. Here it says it is possible. Right? No, it's not. It is possible. You should be asking the question because there's a question mark here. Is it possible for local banks to improve their services and be more competitive in financial institutions? So that is a question that this researcher wants to highlight in the study. Okay? This part here, not so good. Number 9. What are the issues to be examined? If you do not do the study, what are the problems that may arise? Concerns have been raised when a large proportion of graduates fail to gain a job that matches their qualification. What is the problem? The problem is when a large proportion of graduates fail to gain a job that matches their qualification, then there is a concern. What is the concern? Doubts have arisen as to whether the demand for graduates have kept pace with the increasing supply of graduates. Okay, this is a good problem statement. Okay, since higher education is mainly funded by public expenditure, over-education would indicate a misallocation of public money in subsidizing higher education. What is the problem? Over-education would be a misallocation of public money. And then, if the supply of graduates is ahead of demand, should we keep on increasing the budget allocation for higher education and expose graduates to the risk of over-education? This is another problem that is being examined in a question form. And what is the impact of over-education on wages? If this study is not conducted, then this question would not be answered. What is the impact of over-education on wages? Are over-educated workers earning less compared to educated workers whose jobs are commensurate with their educational qualifications? Right? These are the problems. These are questions to be examined that this researcher wants to examine in the problem statement, in this study. So it is highlighted in the problem statement. So this one is a good problem statement. Next is another bad problem statement. Why bad problem statement? It includes statistics. There are statistics in here. There's citations in here. There are citations in here. MPPP 2022. Statistics in here. All right. Bad problem statement. I told you already just now. Do not include all statistics or citations in the problem statement because all this belong in the introduction when you're trying to describe the problem. Whenever you read the problem statement, you must be able to ask this question. What are the problems that may arise? What are the problems that are arising? In a short and sweet manner, rather than to read about statistics and citations and quotations. This is another problem statement by my former student. Immediately, you know it's a bad problem statement. Why? Because it has definition. First sentence of the problem statement is a definition. It's a bad problem statement already. Why? Because it says here, a water problem arises when water is not found in proper quantity and quality at the appropriate place and time. Cite Nees and Sweeney, 1985, page 466. All this is introducing the problem. Yeah, this is not a problem. This is a definition of a water problem. Definition should be in introduction. Water scarcity is a single most important natural constraint on Jordan's economic growth, blah, 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 blah. Statistics. Citations. Statistics. statistics, citation. Not yet finished yet for this student. The same problem statement. Okay, if you ask this question here, what are the problems that may arise? Same student will give you figure 1. Water use in Jordan. All right, statistics. All over statistics, citations, year, figure 1. In the problem statement, 1 page, more than 1 page already. And then, still problem statement. This is still the same problem statement. Describing the issue. All this should be in introduction rather than problem statement, right? Diagram is provided also in the problem statement. Unnecessary. You are diluting the problem statement. You are diluting the issue to be examined. So this is a bad, very, very bad problem statement. See, not yet finished. Still describing the problem. This person is trying to solve the whole of Jordan's problem. How many pages of problem statement? Okay. So that concludes my presentation today on problem statement, which I'm supposed to be talking about only. So in other words, keep your problem statement short and sweet and identify what are the issues to be examined. That's all. I thank you for your attention.